How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for April 12th through April 18th of 2021. 2021 just keeps going faster and faster and faster. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Cam White. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I'm super excited you guys can be here with me this week to talk about this week because things really start to ramp up this week. We haven't had a lot of in my opinion, the planetary energy has been very kind of doing its own thing, not necessarily very abruptive or crazy. Things have been kind of calm. Things were a little bit crazier earlier this year, and then things kind of settled down. Well, we're starting to get back to the craziness a little bit. And, crazy doesn't always mean bad. You know what I mean? It just means, in my opinion, like there's just going to be change. There's going to be some type of, more action happening. And I don't want to even say I think, this week is really where things really pick up pace this week, and especially next week. And I think you're going to really feel that difference because last week, in the past couple weeks, it's been very kind of like things emerging, right? Versus this is things starting to like blossom or start to develop. Well, before we get into the weekly horoscope, two announcements. Just to remember, or just a reminder, my podcast and my Patreon will be live on Saturday, this Saturday on the 17th. I also wanted to shout out, I want to show you guys the graphic. Check out how sick this graphic is it's called The Delineation. I haven't told anybody, I don't think I've told you guys that. It's going to be called The Delineation. It's going to be an astrology show. I'm really excited to do it. I'm really excited to put it out too. Shout out to Casey Reinbold at Cyberworm with no vowels. Casey did a super awesome job on the graphics, and I'm super stoked with how this came out. Very excited for this to be posted on Saturday, so just keep an eye out. And also my Patreon will also be posted along with that on this Saturday. Anyway, that's it for announcements. We have actually a lot to go into this week. This is quite a what's the word I'm looking for? Long week. Here we are on Monday. Monday, the moon's going to go into Taurus, right? We just got off this new moon. The moon's going to enter Taurus, of course, make that conjunction to Uranus that the moon always does as it enters Taurus for now. And also on Monday, the sun is going to begin its sextile to Mars. So what's interesting is, again, what I want to just focus on is the fact that we're coming off this new moon in Aries that we just had on Sunday. And then the moon's going to immediately go into Taurus, right? This new moon in Aries where it was kind of like, all right, where are we, like, this is really, again, now that we're in the astrological new year, Aries season, things are ramping up, things are beginning. This new moon is where it's kind of like, all right, what, intentions are we setting, really? Where are we kind of going? And it was sextile Mars, exactly, its ruler. So there was this kind of like ambitious, curious, like energy to it where it was kind of like, you know what, this is what we're going to go after, for better or for worse, almost in a sense. And as the moon goes into Taurus on Monday, this is where, things kind of get a little bit more cemented in. I think on Monday, though, as the moon goes into Taurus, where we're going to feel a little bit more, it's like, now that we have gotten up to speed, now that we're starting to get resettled, right? Readjusted into things. The moon in Taurus is saying, like, where can we get comfortable? How can we really soak things up? Only thing is the moon's just going to be applying to Uranus all day long. So there's this sense of kind of like feeling like you need to have your quote unquote shit together or have some type of stable ground before, it gets up. It's like when you go to the beach, like my favorite thing about going to the beach is like at least in California, real California people go to the beach early. They go there because no one wants to go there early, right? And you get that spot because it's so, like, getting a spot at the beach is so unpredictable. You really have no idea what you're walking into when you go to the beach. And so I really think of like the moon applying to Uranus here is kind of like, hey, if you want a spot at the beach, like you kind of have to like, the early bird gets the worm here. And then there's this kind of sense of like volatility. You don't know what kind of spot you're going to get. You don't know if, maybe there's going to be some high tide and maybe you're going to have to move from that spot or something's going to happen. Maybe there's a bunch of seaweed, so you don't want to stay in that spot at the beach. There's this sense of like wanting to find comfort and feeling like you need to find comfort, but knowing that there's going to be an unpredictable side of it that you just kind of have to let go of. So just kind of expect Monday to be like, you're going to try to not let the inevitable affect you, but the inevitable probably will. So a good way to look at it is, kind of like prepare, right? Like you can't be a doomsday prepper, right? And worry about the end of the world, but it wouldn't hurt you to have like a medical bag in your closet, right? That's the way I would kind of look at this. Like, find something that will calm your nerves, and find a way to get settled, but just know you're on shaky ground. But what I think is interesting is the sun's going to be sextiling Mars. Well, at least this is just going to be beginning on Monday night, and it's going to continue into Tuesday, where as the sun's in Aries, sextiling its ruler, Mars in Gemini, there's kind of like this, I feel like it's like when the first cavemen like hit a rock and saw a spark. They're like, "Whoa!" Like, hey, like what happens if I do that more? Like, can I start a fire? Like, that's the way I kind of look at the sun sextile Mars. Like, there's kind of like the spark that's hitting. I want to also bring back that this new moon was pretty much exactly sextile Mars, and the sun's going to sextile Mars for pretty much like 2 or 3 days afterwards. So this isn't like a one-day deal. As we kind of start the week, we're really, I think, getting a spark off of something. I don't know what that is, but I think as the sun's in Aries being like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm realizing, right? This is the sun. When we talk about the sun, we're literally talking about like your vitality. Like when you are, it's what everyone kind of sees, right? It's how you express yourself. When the sun's in Aries, the sun's charged up, right? This is like your phone after you charge your phone works better. So as the sun's in Aries and we're kind of feeling this way, it's with the sun sextile Mars, it's like, it's kind of like getting your juice back a little bit. Like if you've taken a break from like, for example, like an instrument for a while, like I've actually had this experience lately, with guitar. Cause I used to play guitar. I'm more a drummer, but I used to play guitar for a long time. And I didn't play for a long time until I recently bought a guitar, and I've been playing it a lot more, and I've actually gotten a lot better than I used to be. And it was just like, it really, I kind of sucked for a minute there. But I've gotten a lot better at it, and it just took some of that time. And it's kind of like, you kind of have to like get that muscle memory coming back. And that's what I feel like a lot of the sun sextile Mars is. Things are growing, things are developing. We have a couple crazy weeks coming up here ahead of us. And so I think this is really getting the ball going. But on Monday, when the moon's in Taurus, there's also the sense of like, okay, now that I've got the spark going, like, how can I while I have the spark going, how can I lay dry tinder underneath so I can catch a flame, right? The moon in Taurus, though, it's just kind of like, it's kind of hard to light a fire. Like, sure, you got the spark going, but like, getting that, that tinder to light up and get the right air, I think that's going to be that's where it is a little bit more difficult. That's not to say it's not going to happen. There's a lot that's happening this week. But just Monday, it's settle yourself where you can, right? You're not going to be able to start a roaring fire instantaneously, but it starts off with just getting a little bit of dry little troubles. Just getting that spark there, and once you get that little fire, then it can turn into a massive fire. And I think that's much more what Monday looks like. And then we get into Tuesday. Notice the Sun-Mars sextile really perfects on Tuesday, even though they're kind of essentially going like at the same speed. But on Tuesday, the moon squares Saturn, where there's this kind of like, the wind knocks out your flame. And you're like, oh, cool. That doesn't totally irritate me. I think as the sun sextiles Mars, there's still this ambition to be like, no, I got the spark. I'm gonna light this fire. It's kind of like my favorite. There's just something so primal about starting a lawnmower. Like, and it doesn't like for everybody, like when a lawnmower doesn't start for you and like you're dedicated to mowing the lawn, like it's so easy to unleash anger at a lawnmower. I don't know why that is, but I feel like this is that Sun Mars sextile moment. It's like when you're like, you know what? I'm just going to yank this lawnmower until it just cracks. And I know a lot of people, like you guys know what I mean when it's just like, you try to start a lawnmower, it's not starting this. You just kind of you just kind of go crazy for a minute, trying to yank it to go. And sometimes it works. It's not a bad hypothesis. Like literally, God, I fixed my dryer the other day by smacking it. It was awesome, honestly. Like you have just sometimes hitting things and banging shit around works. It fixes stuff sometimes. But I think as the Sun Mars sextile happens, it's kind of like you're not gonna give up on trying to light this fire. I think there's this kind of like, you're gonna try to keep throwing things at the wall until something sticks. I just think as the moon's in Taurus here, making this square to Saturn, it's if you've watched, what is it, Survival Guy? I can't remember the show at the moment, but like how long it takes people to like start a fire sometimes. Like you got to be patient. You got to get comfortable because you're going to be there for a minute and you got to have all of your stuff ready. You got to be patient. You got to know that you're going to hit walls, but you have to be stubborn enough. Like, it's not even stubborn enough, like, because that's not even the right word for it. Like, what I love about stuff like survival stuff, especially putting things into perspective like that, like, you don't have a choice but to start the fire. So it's not like you're just gonna give up, right? Like if you were like a caveman or just living a couple thousand years ago, like if you couldn't start a fire, like you didn't just stop. Like you had to start the fire no matter what. And I think as the moon conjoins Uranus later Monday night, earlier on Tuesday, and then squares Saturn, this kind of like, maybe that Tinder you finally lit up, maybe the wind caught it, or maybe and it blew it out, or maybe it fell apart or something like that. You're going to run into some type of issue that is really going to, I think it's just going to be frustrating, number one. Like, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but it's like, it's fixed sign stuff. Like, this isn't fun. It's very stubborn. Nothing's changing. It's like when you try to start a lawnmower and that shit ain't happening. So Tuesday, try your best. Try different things. If it doesn't work the first time, maybe try a different way. You know what I mean? But have patience, right? Expect things to kind of not work. And honestly, there's really just no way to get around it. Anyway, let's move on to Wednesday, because things get dramatically better on Wednesday because Venus enters Taurus on Wednesday. The sun is going to sextile Jupiter on Wednesday. The sun's making a lot of sextiles this week, so take of that what you will. As Venus enters Taurus, the last time Venus entered Taurus, this was like when COVID first hit, and everyone was stopping doing things, and they're like, nature is healing, and there's no pollution. And everything's beautiful. It's been a while since we've had Venus in Taurus. I'm looking forward to it. Think back also too to Venus in Libra. Venus in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is really enjoyable. I've really been liking Venus in Aries for one, but that's also me because I'm fire and air. But Venus in Taurus is going to be really nice because Venus is coming home, right? When you're able to relax yourself. Venus has had a long vacation. Venus has been everywhere, doing everything. Now she's back home in Taurus. How does Venus get comfortable? Venus is about value. Venus is about connection. So Venus is going to be able to do those jobs. Venus is not good at making connections in Aries. Venus is very like blunt and confrontational in Aries. Venus in Taurus is a little bit more settled. It's a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit more like, hey, we can make this easy because we're in Venus's house. We are at the mercy of Venus, if that makes sense. So I don't want to say in one negative sense, problems with Venus and Taurus could just be like, stubborn, lazy, really like just Venus and Taurus is just kind of like, come on, like lower your standards a little bit. Let's relax. Let's, come on, like stop being so bourgeois. Venus, though, going into Taurus, I think is going to make a lot more things enjoyable, right? Connection, harmony. That's just what Venus and Taurus is about. Sure, Venus is technically still combust, but the sun's in exalted. Venus is in domicile here. This paints it a little bit better. I think things will start to feel more enjoyable again, like how it was when Venus was in Pisces or when Venus was in Libra. That was earlier in like Venus was in Libra in like October, I think. Yeah. As Venus enters Taurus, though, the sun's going to sextile Jupiter, which, again, the sun's making a lot of sextiles here. So the sun making a lot of sextiles is like finger guns at people like, hey, how you doing? What's up? What's good? The sun's kind of, I feel like, really kind of like activating things. The sun sextiling Jupiter, I think a great way, I mean, one of Jupiter's natural significations is integration. And I see the sun in Aries sextiling Jupiter in Aquarius is very like separating, like individualizing a certain place, individualizing and kind of realizing opportunities where you can go. Jupiter in Aquarius is seeing things in a bigger, broader dynamic, things having to be more intellectually stable, and the sun sextiling Jupiter is like, oh, hey, I could see, like, this is seeing the solution or seeing a pathway forward. This isn't like, oh, there's a challenge, or this isn't like there's a breakthrough. This is a feeling, right? This is the sun. This is like your character, your overall vitality is going to be feeling strengthened for one. But sextiling Jupiter in Aquarius, that's because you're seeing things in a different way. You're believing things in a different way. You're kind of making things much more sound. And as the sun's in Aries, it's like you're doing something with it, right? It's doing something to you. And so I think this is, again, the sun sextiling Mars is very like, hey, I'm getting used to this. Like, this is new, but I'm changing with it, and I'm starting to get comfortable with it, right? There's this kind of starting to get that balance after you take the training wheels off. And as the sun sextiles Jupiter, this is like that confidence of like, oh yeah, I know how this works now. You know what I mean? So I think as Venus goes into Taurus, it's like, as a kid, there's nothing worse than not enjoying something that everyone else enjoys, in the sense of like, because you can't do it. Like, but then there's always that time where if like I remember like the first time I tried to roller skate, like I believe it or not, I was a roller skate kid. I used to do all of my birthdays at a roller rink. It was super fun. But I used to not be able to roller skate. I can't rollerblade to save my life. But I can roller skate pretty good. But I used to not be able to do it. And it takes time, right? Like you're going to eat shit. It's going to hurt. But once you get it, there's like this confidence, right? And I think, and it becomes more fun. When you don't know how to skate, it's not fun because you crash and you don't feel good, right? You don't win. This is, I look at Venus and Taurus with the sun and Aries, like this is winning. This is winning. This is going like, you know what? This is working. There's achievement here. And I think that those type of, having accolades, having some type of pep, having some type of pat on your shoulder almost in a sense, whether it's from you, whether it's from your actions. I don't know how this is going to look, but it's going to kind of ignite something, right? But the moon's going to square Jupiter. That's the only thing I do kind of look at is like, not necessarily that that's bad, but the moon squaring Jupiter is kind of like, well, maybe if you kind of get out of your mind for a moment. The moon in Taurus is like, again, really trying to, the moon in Taurus wants to take what it needs, right? But squaring Jupiter in Aquarius is like, well, is that, do you really need all of this? I feel like moon in Taurus squaring Jupiter in Aquarius is like that bullshit line of like, what your carbon footprint, like, or save some for the rest of the people, like starving children in Africa could use that. Like that's very moon in Taurus square Jupiter in Aquarius, where there's this sense of like, don't overdo it, right? Especially with this Taurus stuff is like, with everything in Taurus squaring Saturn and Jupiter, right? Like Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius is like, no, what makes more sense? What's going to be much more of a stable idea or ideal to work with? And sometimes that's going to get in the way of what Taurus wants. And what Taurus wants is like, what you want, right? It's Venus's house. It's like, this is what, you have your bare necessities, and then you have the things that you want, right? And that's like really Taurus. Taurus is like, when things are good, when things are pleasurable, there's this, growth that you get. And I think with what I'm trying to get to here is on Wednesday with the moon squaring Jupiter, take what you need, and that's really it. Like, in school, because like what I don't know if anyone did, like, God, they just teach you so much crap at school. But there was just like at the water fountain, like when kids would drink too long, like you always tap their shoulder and it's like 1, 2, 3, that's all you need. And it's just like I hated that. But that's very moon and Taurus square Jupiter and Aquarius. Like, hey motherfucker, everyone else is thirsty too. So and I would look at this much more on it like, hey, if you're winning, you're doing your thing, like don't go like, enjoy it to a degree, right? Like don't go overboard. If you try to go overboard, I think that'd be kind of a fail. But I think, you're winning, you're feeling good. The moon's in Taurus, just relax. You know what I mean? Take what you can, as we get into Wednesday. But also, if you're being like stubborn or like over like protective of something, like just try to be more, see a different perspective, get out of your mind, get out of your head. We're going to get into Thursday. Thursday's where the game changes, in my opinion, because nothing really happens except all of a sudden shit gets really windy. Because on Thursday, the sun is going to continue its sextile to Jupiter, mind you, into the morning. So like I said, the sun sextiling Mars pretty much the first half of the beginning of the week, and then the second half of the week, sun's going to sextile Jupiter. So again, there's this kind of like, to go back to that sparking the stone analogy, the sun sextiling Jupiter is like, finding the right technique to spark it. So you're always getting these good sparks. So now it's like with the moon in Gemini, now it's finally like the wind catches things just right to where you can actually start to grow a flame. Thursday, that sun sextile Jupiter is very, it's like, holy shit, you just started a fire. Congratulations. What does that mean? What is that? Like there's something that's pumping up. There's something that's, I think, exciting. I think there's something too that you're learning about. Like this is the sun sextiling Jupiter. There is some type of thing that you are learning about yourself that you haven't seen before, which I think is the most crazy part about this. Like really the sun in Aries, Aquarius, Gemini, it's like you toying around with something, and because of that, something you've never done, you're like, oh, I see this part of myself I've never seen before. Wow, this makes me feel really good. That's what this is. That's how I'd read this. Like that's just the easiest way to read this, in my opinion. And as the moon goes into Gemini, it's going to be applying to Saturn all day long. So it's like, this is also why I always tell people, like, try it. If you're going to talk to yourself, like in your head, like literally say it out loud. Like it's so easy to say stuff in your head and then not remember what you said to yourself. But like when you say it out loud and you apply it, it helps kind of build the idea. But I feel like the moon in Gemini is, by the time we get into Thursday, there's this kind of like, it's like when you, for example, I used to be a geometry tutor, and all of my students used to just, suck at geometry, which is easy because, math's hard. But what I used to do is I used to just give them the answer, like, all the time. Like, well, rather than you trying to figure out what the right answer is, like, I'm like, here's the answer. Tell me how we get here, though, so you can kind of figure out how we got there. And they would be able to build on that. And it's like, once it started clicking for them, they're like, oh, like, that's how you get to this answer. It's like, yeah, like now you know how to apply. And as the moon goes into Gemini, it's trining Saturn. It's going to hit the North Node too. These North Node hits are going to start to become very crucial from here on out, because they're going to start emphasizing the eclipses that we're going to be having here in a couple weeks. But as the moon's in Gemini trining Saturn, this is getting it. Everything's kind of starting to click. We get into Friday, and Friday gets a little crazy, in my opinion. It's a windy day on Friday. The moon is going to conjoin Mars first. Well, actually, it will sextile Mercury, then conjoin Mars or actually my bad, it will square Neptune, then sextile Mercury, then conjoin Mars, then trine Jupiter, all while Mars is trining Jupiter on Friday. Friday is like, you do not need coffee on Friday morning. You do not need coffee. You don't need, just wake up and vibe. You're going to feel it. We're all going to be on a sick one on Friday. In fact, Friday is a great day. It's such a good day to log off. Get off the internet on Friday. What is great about this though is that the moon squaring Neptune is always kind of like, it's like when you see something on Twitter and it's like something happens and it's like when like the whole DMX thing, like how when he first, went to the hospital, it was like, everyone's like, oh my God, he died. And then it was like, no, he didn't. And it was like all this information, but no one knew how to decipher any of it or what was truth. That's kind of like that moon squaring Neptune, right? The moon sextiling Mercury in Aries though is like very much fucking around and finding out. Mercury in Aries is like, you kind of find the guy that's like, hey, this is what's going, like if you find the guy, Mercury in Aries is like the guy that tells you the lowdown and is like, explains to you what's going on. And then as the moon conjoins Mars, there's this kind of, that's a very like, dude, like this, I say log off only because it's just going to be so easy to get you to just gas yourself up in the good and bad ways too. Like if you're like, this is a great day to have fun. Like you're going to be like, wow, I feel amazing. Or if you like decide to get in an argument, like something says can real, like this is like, oh, try not to pick a fight on this day because I think people are going to be totally wanting to fight. Like this is very much like but this isn't like a fight because like angry. This is a fight because like, you know what? Like we're all on some shit right now. Like it's like, it's just, it's also kind of, it's fun in one sense. But, what I'm trying to say here is just try not to pick a fight because also I think you'll be really exhausted from it. The moon, conjoining Mars and Gemini, there's this kind of irrational, emotion over certain ideas. This is kind of, getting really into something. The moon's going to be trining Jupiter too. So there's this kind of like, for example, this is so, here's a good way to look at it. This is the only, I think, example I can think of. I went to the beach last year for like the first time in like 8 years. And I'm a Leo. Number one, if it's one thing I've learned about me being a super fire and air is like, I love water, but like, I'm not like, I don't like pools. Like I just like, it's cool to like, I'll stick my feet in, I'll hang out, but it's just water. It's not as cool. Like I like rivers and stuff. But anyway, I went to the ocean. Anyway, I finally went out in the ocean. I was in the water for like 5 hours straight. Just didn't even get out. Like, and it was just like, oh man, I was just so into it. It was so much fun. It was so intense that's like, you don't even realize that like time passes. It's like when you do something that energizes you, it's so easy to just keep going. Like you just find that momentum, you find that stimulation, and that's where Friday comes in. Friday looks so fucking fun in my opinion. It looks a little wild, like, I think if you're going to be snappy to people are going to snap back. So, just don't expect any free hits, but this is definitely chaotic in one sense. But the one thing I want to bring up is just as Mars is trining Jupiter pretty much the whole day. The more and more it's like when you see every opportunity and you see things in a big view, you're like, oh, well, I need to do this. I need to do that. It's like information overload, right? This is really good. Mars trine Jupiter is like, hey, now that you've seen the big picture and now that you kind of get how to take advantage of that, do it. But just like the hard part about this is you're going to feel like, oh, it's like when you're working 50, 60 hours a week and you got to do all of everything in one day, right? Like on your one day off. It's exhausting. It's a lot. It's also like, it's productive. But I look at this Mars trine Jupiter as like, you're going to want to do a billion things, which good, go for it. Have fun with it. However, just know that you can't, sometimes you can't knock everything off your list, right? And I feel like, and that's the problem with Mars and Gemini. It's not good at finishing things. It's really good. Well, I don't want to say it's not good at finishing things. Mars in Gemini trining Jupiter and Aquarius is like, there's so much that you can do that there's no way to do it. Like when you go to Disneyland, if you, like, I haven't been to Disneyland in a long time, so I'm sure it's a lot bigger, but you can't really do all of Disneyland and like California Adventure in like a day, like everything, right? It's going to take some time. So just know that you can't do it all, but you're going to feel like you can. So in my opinion, if you're trying to feel like you can do it all, go for it. Try to do as much as you can. Just don't get, super disappointed in yourself. I don't want to say take it easy. You're going to be like, you're going to like, once it clicks, it's like, oh, go time, go. So go. Just, be happy with what you get. That's the other thing with Jupiter. Like, it's not about getting everything. It's about having the opportunity to have something there. And it's like, I don't know. Just take advantage of it. Be happy with what you get. You get what you get. You don't throw a fit. And then we get into Saturday. And Saturday, what's really magical is, of course, my podcast will come out. And so you guys will listen to that. And pretty much what happens on Saturday is Mercury is actually going to finally make this sextile to Mars. We've been waiting for that. This mutual reception finally happens between the two planets. Mars is pretty much trining Jupiter again all day long. Mercury is also sextiling Jupiter exactly here. Mercury is also squaring Pluto. Make of that what you will. But the moon's going to pretty much ingress into Cancer and make a sextile to Venus all day long. So Saturday really looks like where, again, it's just things are just clicking. And I think with the moon in Cancer, like, let's look at this moon in Cancer transit. This moon in Cancer transit isn't being like heavily afflicted by stuff. I know it's kind of like when the moon goes into Cancer, we're like, because we're so used to all, the past couple years of all of the Capricorn transits. But this moon in Cancer is very, I think on Saturday, we're going to start to feel very comfortable. I think we're going to feel very nurtured, very safe, very like, this feels right. Mercury sextiling Jupiter, sextiling Mars. Like, again, everything just really clicks mentally here. Like, even emotionally too, because like fire signs are so emotional. With all this Aries stuff, it's all passion, right? Like it's all ambition. It's all like awakened energy is a good way to look at it. Mars and Gemini is like, that coffee hits you. Jupiter and Aquarius, it's like being a kid and it's a Saturday morning and you're like, I know that this is all I have is Saturday morning to go and do the things I want to do. So I'm going to go crazy and do it all. That's pretty much what Saturday looks like. So and again, I'm a big fan of like, dude, like living your inner child, like, have fun for the love of God. Like you can get smacked by a car tomorrow and die. Like straight up, why wouldn't you not want to have fun as much as you can? Because death is completely out of your control. Now, have fun on Saturday. And also as the moon goes into Cancer too, I think this is going to be, it's kind of like, where I don't know how else to explain it, because I know not everyone's going to be able to relate to this, which of course I can't tell stories that everyone can relate to, but it's kind of like I used to have a really big family. I still do have a big family, but not anymore, because like once your grandparents die, it's kind of like no one hangs out with each other anyway. But back when my family used to get together, they're like, of course, every family hates each other, but that's like I love my family because all we do is talk shit about each other. But it's fun in my opinion. Anyway, there's this moment though with the family stuff. It's like when everyone's there and you're all just bullshitting and talking, and even if it's annoying and there's bad, it's like, but there's all like this like safe connection, right? There's kind of like, it's all there. It's like after like I doubt any of you guys listen to the Tim Dillon show. If some of you listen to the Tim Dillon show, God, comment below because I will laugh my ass off. Anyway, I wouldn't recommend it because he's a comedian, but he's pretty funny. But he talks a lot about how after funerals, right? Because my family's been to a lot of funerals. There's always like this, after the funeral, you go and eat, And it's like, it's very lighthearted, but it's very like, you can connect. You don't have to worry about following up with people. His rant about it's really funny. But that's how I kind of look at Saturday. It's like, it's like that feeling after like a funeral, It's like, oh, that was really sad, but hey, we've all got food and we're all here, and what's up, pretty much. We're moving on. So, I think it's Saturday too. The moon's gonna leave that conjunction with Mars, pretty much go void or sextile the sun, then go into Cancer. You're gonna feel safe. You're gonna feel connected. You're gonna feel, like that's like you're gonna be valuing that, treasuring that, and shit's just gonna click on Saturday. Saturday looks great. We go into Sunday though. Now Sunday again, more things click. Now, I'm curious about this Mercury Cazimi that we're having, because this is also, too, kind of the highlight of this week. Out of everything that we've talked about today, this is really the highlight of the week. This is, in my opinion, the big one. Mercury conjoining the sun, of course, resetting Mercury's cycle. Mercury, it's, kind of gets purified again. Mercury is going to be slowly moving forward from the sun from here, so it'll still be kind of combust and have its issues. But this is where things kind of like get settled down and start to kind of go up from here. Also, from here on out, we get ready for the Mercury retrograde in Gemini that we're going to have here in a couple weeks, which this Mercury retrograde in Gemini is so, like, I literally just wrote out all of my notes for it because I'm going to do a Mercury retrograde video for it. Like, it's such a wild Mercury retrograde. Like, I'm kind of blown away by it. Anyway, this Mercury Cazimi is starting that cycle for one, so pay attention, take some notes or whatever. But this is also happening pretty much at the same degree that that Mars stationed retrograde on last year. So there could be some, I wouldn't think too hard into this. There might be some type of, information or some type of something that comes up that gets revealed, that gets clarified about that Mars retrograde. Think of the very beginning of September, what was going on. Same thing with like the beginning of January too, when Mars left shadow. This Mercury Sun conjunction, things get really cleared up. But I would also look at this too at the very end of Aries is Aries is so much, like, what is Mars is about? Like, Mars at the end of the day is about survival, right? Because Mars, like, we look at Mars as malefic because malefic planets bring things that are technically uncomfortable, that are sometimes difficult. That doesn't mean that they're not helpful, though, right? Like, Saturn being mature, being strong, very helpful. Same thing with Mars. Being able to fight your battles is pretty handy. But I look at, like that last degree and that sun, Mercury conjoining the sun here. It's kind of like understanding the power of the weapon that you use. And I think Mercury conjoining the sun is kind of, again, a lot of mental clicks are happening this week. Like a lot of like, oh shit, this is, and it's not even mental clicks like there's this issue or something, but it's kind of just like, wow, like realizing something, and it's gonna hit, and it's gonna hit in a good way. Like I don't know how else to explain it. But what's interesting is after this, because let's just clarify Sunday. Sunday, it's like, that mentally things really start to click, and this is a good time to also communicate a message. Some type of message is going to get communicated here. Like things really, there's going to be a lot of clicking with action. Like, oh, you're starting to get it. So like, to go back to the geometry analogy, it's like the couple days before this, it's like, oh, I get how this works. And this is like, okay, now you're doing the homework, and now you like know how to do it on your own. Like, now that you get it, now it's about like applying it. And now you're like, oh, this is easy by the time we get to Sunday. The moon's also pretty much just going to be, moon's really not going to do anything, because I'm pretty sure Mercury and the sun both ingress into Taurus before the moon makes an aspect to them. So the moon won't be, it'll trine Neptune. Whoa. But really after the moon sextiles Uranus, it's kind of just hanging out in Cancer. So I think I really think on Sunday, it's just going to feel good. Like, it's just kind of like, winning feels good. Achieving feels good. Learning feels good. Adapting feels good. And this is all fire and air stuff, right? Like, this is literally like when you talk about combustion and you talk about like I always like to think of like engines, right? When you have everything timed out right and everything is the way that it needs to be and that thing's like ripping, like it creates a lot of power. But if your gas is off or your air pressure or whatever is messed up, like it can really do a lot of damage and not be good, right? I look at this as like, hey, we're banging on all 4 cylinders, and we got some race fuel also in the engine. Like, it's sounding good, right? It's exciting, it's invigorating, and I think when the moon's in Cancer, it's like also too. When you have like car problem after car problem after car problem, like everyone here in America does because our whole country is reliant on vehicles, it's a very frustrating experience, even though cars are very liberating and, in my opinion, a very, like, as a Sag Rising, I fucking love cars and just the freedom they give. But it's like, man, if you have a bunch of car problems and you finally get that shit fixed, it's like, and it's like, finally, it's done. It's taken care of. Sure, might have cost some money and some patience and time and whatever. But once it's done and it's like, you feel comfortable again, right? Like you taking care of stuff. And that's what this moon in Cancer really, God, that's a 40-minute fucking horoscope. Jeez, I'm talking a lot. This moon in Cancer is going to feel like, finally things are taken care of, right? What does it feel like to be taken care of? What does it feel like to feel safe? What does it feel like to feel comfortable? Those are questions to ask yourself during that time. That's this week, though. I can't believe I went 40 minutes here, but this is a lot of stuff. This is a lot of good stuff, and it's important because next week, listen to this list of next week. The sun's going to go into Taurus. Mercury's going to go into Taurus. Mars is going to enter Cancer. Venus is going to conjoin Uranus. Mercury is going to conjoin Uranus. Venus is also going to square Saturn, and Mercury is going to conjoin Venus, which is really important because the whole Mercury retrograde that we're going into is Mercury conjoining Venus. So, or I should say Venus conjoining Mercury as Mercury stations retrograde. Like, I'm writing all of the May horoscopes right now, and I'm going to start recording them too. And the Mercury-Venus thing that really kicks off the Mercury retrograde kind of starts next week with the Mercury-Venus conjunction in Taurus, which, of course, I'll talk about next week. But anyway, next week, the vibe completely changes. It completely changes. Aries season, all of this air stuff, it's been fun. Next week, it's like, it's not that it's bad, but the vibe completely changes. So, and this is also why I'm emphasizing, like, enjoy this week while you can. Win, take in a moment to acknowledge yourself, give yourself a win, because you're gonna need that for later. You know what I mean? You're not always going to be winning. But I also think next week has so many changes occurring. Next week just a lot of change happens versus this week isn't a lot about change. A lot of this week is about like clarifying, realizing, growing, pursuing. Next week is like change. I think that's what I've got for you guys. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. I'll be seeing you next week. And don't forget, for Saturday, I'll be posting the podcast. So with that being said, see ya.